This is our agenda for this evening. I'll do a quick introduction to phone banking, super quick. Then I'm going to walk through the process for creating a call list in Votebuilder, how to get that call list into the virtual phone bank tool. And at the end, I will share some additional resources, including this is one of 6 different Votebuilder training sessions that I'm delivering in the month of July. So there are more training opportunities to come. Now, just in case, if you, when I say the word Votebuilder, if that doesn't ring a bell with you, there might be other opportunities that are more appropriate for you, that are better aligned. Votebuilder is our database of voters and volunteers that people use. So you're probably a county party chair, a candidate, a precinct leader, somebody who works on a campaign if you're using Votebuilder. But we have other resources available that I can type in the chat for knocking doors, making calls, and other training opportunities. So for this real quick introduction to a phone bank, I want to throw this question to the group and have people type in the chat. What is a phone bank? Why do we do it? Why is it important to us? I see a couple people look like they might be typing in the chat, so I'm gonna wait. Yeah. Ooh, interesting. Yeah. So, Marcy West, I'm going to come back to that point in a little bit, but, yeah, to make contacts, to talk to voters, establish targeted list of Democrats to call. I'm going to expand on that a little bit. Yeah. Voter outreach, get people to our events, get people to vote. Direct voter contact is crucial. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to add a little bit of context on a couple of those answers on some of these slides. So thank you very much. So what I want to share here is that phone banking is pretty much the second most effective way to identify supporters, persuade them of our candidates or issues, and get out the vote. Canvassing is the most effective way, but it also is more labor intensive. Also, canvassing, door knocking, not everybody is physically able to knock on doors. So by having some phone banks in the mix, that can be a really good option for people who have accessibility needs. Also with phone banks, you can target your lists a little bit more narrowly than you would probably be doing if you were canvassing, if you were out knocking on doors. Also, all the work that we're always doing, whether it's canvassing, it's phone banking, it's behind the scenes work, we're always working to improve the quality of our data. Every time you dial a phone number and you get that weird beep that tells you the number's disconnected, that's helpful because then we clean up our data. And when it gets to be October, if it gets to be November, we're not going to dial that number. So even sometimes when we don't contact people, all of that information is very helpful for us. And yes, John, we want to reach out to people to tell them in a lot of different ways about our candidates, about our causes, and about the election. So I can share a little bit here about where the phone numbers come from in Votebuilder. There are 3 main sources. The bulk of the information comes from the DNC and various vendors who do data analytics work to try to match up phone numbers to registered voters. A good chunk of the phone numbers comes from the Board of Elections. So when you fill out your voter registration form, you are encouraged to add your phone number to that form. So we get information from there. And then there's all the information we are adding and updating as we are engaging with the community, as we are dialing, as we are knocking doors. All of that information is updated on an ongoing basis. Okay, that was a quick primer on phone banking, why it's so important, and where the information comes from, the phone numbers. What questions do you have before I start walking through the process to create a call list? All right, we'll move on. Do texting and phone banking work the same? If you are pulling a list to text people, the list creation process is actually the same. The list creation steps are basically the same if you're knocking doors, making calls, or texting. But then when I get to section 3 here, using a virtual phone bank, that part is specific to phone banking. So if you were trying to get lists to text, there would be a different process for that. And generally, the research finds that texting people to persuade them about an issue or candidate is not super effective. Texting people to let them know their polling location, so people we've already identified as supporters, texting them to help get them to the poll is where texting is most effective. So you'll probably hear more from us about texting in the fall. Peter, has the accuracy of the numbers gotten better over the years? The data is always getting better. The data is also always imperfect. So I don't know, Brian, if there's any context you want to add on that?
Sure. So anecdotally, the data does tend to get better or has been getting better over the past couple of years. One of the big drivers of that is the rise of standard cell phone plans for people on lower economic brackets as opposed to prepaid. The sort of shift away from that has led to a lot of numbers becoming a little bit more stable. Whereas I remember a decade ago when I first started in this work, we had a lot of folks who would have numbers that would sort of appear, be active for a little while, they'd run out of minutes, and then it would look to be inactive only to get topped up again next month. The DNC has been working on new tools to algorithmically generate better guesses about which phone numbers are cell phones versus landlines, and which ones are more likely or less likely to be active. But as always, there are bad numbers in the system. There's this part of the reason why we've got to do these threshing rounds.
Yeah, it's part of why we do this work so early, is because the data does always improve and the quality of the data gets better, and it's more important later in the cycle. It's always important and it's always getting better. Dana, I see your question about where the phone numbers come from. A few slides ago, I shared it does come from the voter rolls and also outside consultants and organizations that do this work to match people to phone numbers. And Jenny, your questions on creating your list of My Campaign or My Voter is a fantastic transition to the next section on creating those lists. So if you want to follow along, if you're comfortable using 2 screens, you could, or if you're watching this as a recording at some future date, or when I send these slides out tomorrow, this is kind of your cue to log in to Votebuilder and follow along as I work through these steps. I recommend you bookmark the Votebuilder web address so that you can get to it easily. And a few tips here in general on working with Votebuilder, no matter what type of task you're doing. I encourage patience, practice, and experimentation. So it takes more than an hour to learn Votebuilder. Brian and I combined have like 15 years of experience. There's still stuff we figure out. So you won't know everything there is to know about Votebuilder at the end of this session. It's an incredibly powerful tool. So encourage you to attend some of the other trainings I'm having. And practice is important because the more you use it, the easier and faster it gets. There are some tasks that I do with regularity, so I get very quick and it becomes second nature. There's like this muscle memory of doing those tasks. And then when I'm trying to accomplish something I don't do as often, it just takes me longer because I have to remember the steps. So that is pretty normal with working with Votebuilder. Also, there's more than one way to do some of these things. So I'm going to show you the process that I use, but if you have a way that's working for you to complete a task that isn't the exact same as the path I take, if it's working for you, fantastic. And then finally, experimentation. You really can't break Votebuilder. So when I am trying to do something new or trying to figure something out, I just jump in and experiment. I try a few things, see what works, see what doesn't work. So you can experiment as you're trying to accomplish your program goals. But I also don't want you to bang your head into the wall for too long here because Votebuilder is so powerful. It can be complicated. So Brian and I are here and I'll share our office hours and our email addresses and stuff. So if you come up against something and you can't figure out how to do it, don't spend too much time struggling with it. Reach out. And we both love a good Votebuilder mystery. So we'll be happy to help. Okay, so for Jenny's question here. So this is the process for building your contact list for a phone bank. Step one is to create a people you're targeting in My Voters or My Campaigns, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. If you are calling registered voters to talk about the Democratic candidates, you will be working in My Voters, what we call My V. If you're building a phone bank because you want to recruit previous volunteers to attend an event, you're probably going to use My Campaigns, or what we abbreviate as My C. So think about what you're trying to accomplish, and that will tell you if you should be in My Voters or My Campaigns. And think about whatever criteria is relevant for what you're trying to accomplish. And at the end, when I can do some live demos and screen sharing, I can walk through an example or two. So this is what Votebuilder looks like when you can log in. Randy, I see your comment, and Brian will probably look on the back end to see if you should have access. You would have access if your county party has given you access, if you're a precinct leader, if you're a candidate, maybe part of an affiliate organization or a caucus, things like that. So here's My Voters and My Campaigns. And to create your list, I've drawn a red arrow here on the left-hand side to create a list. In this example, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner area, I am under My Voters. And for this example, I'm going to be phone banking. I have picked My Voters. I have selected Holly Springs, which is the city I live in. And then I have, so that's my home district. And then under targets, we have pre-built targets that Brian and his data colleagues across the country, they spend a lot of effort developing these targets so that the persuasion targets that I have selected here, these are people who they vote regularly, and we have reason to believe they're undecided voters. So we want to talk to them about Democratic candidates. The second target universe listed here is for turnout. Those are people who are strong Democrats, but they don't vote in every single election. So we want to talk to those people and make sure they get to the polls. And then there's also this universe here that is vol recruitment. V3 is the third one listed. Those are people who are high likelihood to be Democrats, vote very regularly. And so those might be people you could reach out to see if they're interested in volunteering. So for this list I'm pulling in My Voters, you can see I've got about 3,500 people. So that was the first step, to start that list of people we want to target, depending on what your goal is. This second step, and this is specific for phone banks, but you're going to narrow that list to people who actually have phone numbers in the system. So you don't have to have a phone number to register to vote. So there are going to be people here where we don't have a phone number. We also want to exclude anybody who has asked to be put on the do not call list. There are a couple ways to do this. The way I'm demonstrating here would be, I'm going to add a step to narrow. So I'm going to narrow the universe down. And under phones, and I can walk through this if you don't see that as you're going through Votebuilder, but under the phones section of criteria, I'm going to check all here. So phone numbers that came from all these different sources, came from the voter file, came from a vendor, may have been added by a person because we talked to somebody, a mobile phone, bulk upload. I'm going to add all of these phones. The next step is in the criteria for suppressions. I'm going to exclude people who have said do not call. Okay, so I pulled my list. I narrowed it to people who have phone numbers, and I took out everybody who has said do not call. Another step to consider is to remove anybody who has been contacted recently, so your conversation quality is a little better. So for example, if you are with a county party, you might have a canvassing program running and a phone bank program. So you don't need to phone bank the people who volunteers have spoken to on the doors. So if they knocked on their door and had a conversation, you don't need to also call them. It's more efficient to remove those people from your conversation. So in this case, I have gone to the Canvas status section. And if you, well, that slide I was supposed to delete, there we go. So if you select exclude, it's going to automatically exclude the most common criteria or data points that people like to exclude. You might adjust these. So for example, and I'm going to go back to the slide that's a little embiggened here. So I'm excluding people who have been canvassed. So we spoke to them. Let's see, I'm going to exclude people who are deceased. I'm excluding commercial numbers. That's probably not really relevant for a phone bank, but if you're door knocking, you'll probably exclude because knocking on the door of a business is not super effective. I'm going to exclude people who have been marked as hostile. Exclude people who have moved, no contact, non-US citizens, people who are not interested, whose primary language is something other than English, exclude out of order phone numbers, people who have refused, threatened, wrong number. So this is the same basic information, just a little bit smaller. So what you can do when you're pulling your list is skim through those and see if there are some you want to unselect. So for example, there's one of these that says inaccessible. So if a home is inaccessible. If you've canvassed, we train people to mark if a home can't be accessed so that they can't be phone banked. So I'm going to unselect this one here. You might pull a phone bank that is specifically people in your county who have been marked as inaccessible. That might be a phone bank you would pull. So you can kind of experiment a bit with some of these options, but you can see the list that I had for Holly Springs was 3,500 people. When I exclude these categories and make sure I only have people with phone numbers, now I'm at 2,900 people. You can also when it comes to canvassing, when you're excluding people who have been canvassed, you might want to set a date range around that. So maybe you want to only exclude, maybe right now you're excluding everybody who has been canvassed so far this year. It's still, a little early in the cycle, but come October, if you're making a phone list in October, you might want to only exclude people who were canvassed in the past week or two. And then once it gets to be, those 5 days in November, you're probably going to talk to all those people if you can. So once you have the criteria where you want it, the number of people makes sense to you, go ahead and run your search. So this is the search result. So I've created a call list. Once you've created that list, you should save it. I have an arrow here drawn to the Save List button. And there are two ways you can save it. You can make a saved list or a saved search. A saved list doesn't change. The people whose names are on there stays on there. A saved search, however, does get updated as the data in our database gets updated. So for example, I've pulled this sample list for Holly Springs. If somebody registers to vote in Holly Springs today, and I made my list yesterday, if I've saved it as a search, they'll be caught in the next update of this list. So saved search does update the information in your search result. So in this case, I happen to be making a saved list instead of a saved search. No, hold on. Okay, I'm saving this list here. So what I have, you'll need to indicate the folder to save it to. This is a folder within Votebuilder. And when you name it, I really recommend developing some type of naming convention, a standard so that things are named the same all the time, in the same pattern, so that you can remember what you did, so that other people remember what you did. It's good to have consistent naming conventions. So for example, I generally name things year, geography, purpose. So this example is 2024 Holly Springs, that's the town, and persuasion, because these are persuasion targets in this universe. So I recommend having that naming convention. Okay, that was how to create and save your list. I saw a bunch of stuff going on in the chat that I could not keep up with. Brian, what questions do we have that we should talk about?
I think I've answered most everything. We did get the question of whether or not my voters and my campaign are separate databases, which they are, though they share a significant amount of overlap in data, as well as whether or not you can create call lists targeting specific precincts or sets of precincts, which yes,
Yeah.
you can do both of those. And then a couple of people who are experiencing some difficulty because they have not been invited by a committee to access their vote builder yet, but working on that.
Okay, awesome. Before I go on to how to now move this list into a virtual phone bank, thank you for those updates, Brian. Does anybody want to come off mute and ask a question before I move on?
Do you think you might be able to demo setting up a list using specific precincts, more than one at a time? Because I'm trying to do that and I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, so let me write that down because I will have time to do a live demo. So precinct list. So now I have a request for what to demonstrate. So give me about 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see Peter's question too. You know, part of this is you think about what you're trying to accomplish. And as you have opportunities to experiment with Vote Builder and use it, um, you'll get a hang for what works for you and what works best for certain purposes. And you know, I'm always available in my office hours to help you think through some stuff. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Let's jump into taking your list to make it a virtual phone bank. And again, I will share these slides. Usually takes me about 24 hours. And I think they're built so that you could actually follow them one at a time and follow the process. So a virtual phone bank, which you might also hear us call a VPB. So this is fully electronic in that you don't print paper lists. It's all done for VPB, and virtual phone bank is kind of the tool instead of minivan. Minivan's used for canvassing. Virtual phone bank is used to set up a phone bank. Okay. So these screenshots here, I've pulled a list. This is a different example. It looks like I might have pulled two different examples. Sorry, but so we have a list, and once you're on that screen that says your list is created, there's this old-fashioned telephone icon. It says calls. I've drawn a red box around it. When you click on that link, it gives you this pop-up screen so you can set up a virtual phone bank list. That's the graphic on the right-hand side of the screen. There are a couple of pieces of information that you have to set or decide to set up your virtual phone bank, and there are a whole bunch of optional features. So I'm going to focus on the ones that you have to do, and you can leave all the others alone and it'll be fine. So you need to give your virtual phone bank a name. Again, I like to use a naming convention. So July 2024, Holly Springs Persuasion Phone Bank, something like that. You can select a script that we have, and there's a particular script that we're using a lot of, which is P100 issues. It's called something like that. You can create your own script, and there is a separate training session on how to create a script. You will indicate the start and end date for the phone bank for callers, and then publish to open VPB. Those are the 4 things that are mandatory, and this is what it looks like on the screen. So you can see here, I've given it a name. This looks like April 9th, 2024 training example. You can also add a description. So if you use abbreviations or things like that, it's helpful to also add a description. This is so if you ever need somebody else to be picking up where you left off, things will make more sense to them if you have developed a naming convention. Then there is the script option. So the second red arrow, I have selected the 24 P100 issues script. That is the primary script that we are using. So if your county party doesn't have that access to that script, I don't know if I can give you access to it, but no, Brian can, but we'll help you get scripts if you need one. And then I've got brackets around the start date and the end date. You do have to put an end date. If you're building, you know, if it's October 31st and you're building a phone bank that's going to run until November 5th, then put November 6th as the end date. I create a lot of very short-term phone banks, like the confirmation calls my volunteer made for tonight's class. So I'll set this so it's only a day or two long. So this is the list of some of the options that you can select. The only one here that I really ever use is the first one here, designated contact. I have my name and phone number in there so that if the phone bank volunteers have any questions, they can reach out to me, and they quickly know how to do that. And then I have created my virtual phone bank here. So you see, I've got the name, I've got the description. I had selected my script. I set it to publish to open VPB. And now on the right-hand side in these green brackets, that is the link you will send people to access the phone bank. I always hit the copy button here. Like, I'm not going to write this down or anything like that. Hit copy. Then I paste it into my email or, paste it into a spreadsheet where I track phone banks. That is the link that you will send people to access your phone bank. That's how you get your list into an open VPB. The next section I have are some additional resources. So I'm going to pause here and see if anybody has questions. Otherwise, I'm going to walk through those resources and then I'll do a live screen share.
Can I do one audio with you?
Yes, go ahead, Peter.
Okay. Does a volunteer have to be signed in and registered with Votebuilder before they can actually do the phone banking?
No, they don't need Votebuilder. They will be prompted to create an action ID, which is the username and password that people also use to use Minivan. It's a pretty standard account creation process and, takes 2 minutes. So they don't need Votebuilder access. No.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Graham.
So what do we do for analytics on the back end of phone banks? Because I have plenty of people running them. I know how to do phone banks, but I don't know how to get the data back out.
I'm trying to remember if I cover that in the Votebuilder 201 training class. I don't think I do, but Brian or I are available in office hours to help you with that. And if I have a chance, maybe I'll try to work it into the screen share here in a couple of minutes. Marth.
It's Martha. So you had 2,953 people, but yet on the individual thing, you already had 43. How do you reduce that, or how do you cut up that whole list into individual things to give to people?
So I mixed screenshots when I built that slide. So those were 2 different projects. So what you actually do when you have it in OpenVPB, it's not like cutting turf to Canvas. You give everybody that OpenVPB, and on the back end, it only lets every phone number be called one time. So you don't need to divide it up. You could have 20 people attending the phone bank. You give them all the same link and it's fine. It's not like cutting turf to knock doors.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Jim.
Yes. Hey, Christy. So you were talking about VPB being like Minivan. Is it actually a computer-based app that people have to download to then use, or is it another phone-based app?
So you can actually use it in any browser window.
Okay.
So it's a good question, actually, and I should probably add something in there that your volunteers should be prepared to at least bring their phone, and ideally bring a phone and a laptop or tablet, because I find it easier to have one screen, my laptop with the phone numbers,
Yep.
dial on my phone. I also use headsets because as you can see, I gesticulate. I need to be able to move my hands. So headsets are super helpful.
Sure.
So it's not a separate app. It's in the web browser. VP, it's not an auto dial.
Okay, they'd have to pull up the web browser and then insert that number that you generated.
They can click on that link.
I got you.
The OpenVPB link, and it will take them right there. So it isn't a bulk dialer. People will manually dial from their phones. When we get closer to November, we're likely to have a bulk dialer, but this method is free. and the dialer costs, so it starts to add up. You
Yep.
also, to effectively use a dialer, you need to have a lot of people on it at the same time for it to really work right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. I see a question from West in the chat about security. There was a phone bank with a lot of odd people signed up, not registered voters. So I guess I'm a little curious, who the odd people are. I personally like to have people I don't know join my events because it's kind of like I'm constantly recruiting. Now, if they were people who were, I don't know, into some weird phone bank shenanigans, like I would boot them out. Otherwise, if they're people I don't know, but they're attending my phone bank event, I consider that a win.
They actually did not show up. So they all appeared to be people who signed up from mobilize.us, and the names, none of the names were voters registered in my county. So it seemed like it was a way to try and get data. We didn't pre-send out the link for the phone bank. We waited until we did our training, but that's just something maybe people should be aware of.
Yeah, if it's a way to try to get data, I don't know that it's a fantastic way to try to get data, but I agree with you. I probably would not be putting that open VPB link in a Mobilize event posting. I would wait until people show up in the Zoom. Yeah. Okay, let me, okay. Let me share these additional resources and then I can do a screen share, and I will start with the precinct list. And then my second thing will be phone bank results, which somebody asked for. And I think I know how to find it. I'm not entirely sure. So we're going to experiment. Okay. I will share these links. So we have a Linktree page that lists all of the canvases coming up that the state party is helping organize. We have regularly scheduled phone banks where I think we're still calling volunteers to recruit them to attend the canvases. So if you haven't yet hosted your own phone bank and you want to attend one of these and kind of get the lay of the land, that could be helpful. And I will also share the full training schedule. The NCDP Living Library is essentially a shared drive. It's been built up over the past several years, predates me, but there is a Votebuilder folder and it has slides for each of the training sessions. So I will share this tomorrow. And everywhere on here where you see that animated mouse click icon, if you click on it, it will take you to the link. So the Living Library is a really good resource. There is also the voter guide. It's a, I don't know, 40 or 50 page Google Doc. It's helpful if you are stuck on a certain thing and you want to search for a key term in the Votebuilder guide and see what kind of help it has in there. Not Votebuilder related, but we publish every week a content package is what we call it. It's sent via email. It's developed by our digital director and our communications director. If you have ever said, like, I wish I knew what the talking points were, subscribe to the content package. So every week we'll say, these are the top issues we're talking about based on what our candidates are doing, what the opposition's doing, what's going on in the news. We share some of our social media posts and ask people to amplify that, like retweet, share, like. And also, they share general graphics that you can use for your own social media posts. Particularly if you're engaged in your county party, it can be kind of a beast to have regular social media content posted. But this is a good resource for that. And this is emailed around every Wednesday. This is the full series of Votebuilder trainings. Again, I will email this. This is the last time I expect to be able to do these trainings before the November election. So this time around, I am recording each of them so I can post them to YouTube. You can see which topics are covered. This time next week, a similar session on building canvases in Votebuilder. managing volunteer data, building scripts. There have been some questions about that. And then Votebuilder 201 is the last session coming up on July 30th. This is our schedule of canvases. So if you've heard of Project 100, that is our effort, our program to talk to voters in each of the 100 counties across the state. I feel like we might be up to 60 counties so far. There is a link here. The sign up here link will take you to a list of all of these. There's several counties now that have ongoing canvases regularly. You can see that alphabetical order on the bottom of the page. This weekend, we have 8-9 counties that are canvassing. Next weekend is light because the North Carolina Democratic Party, we have our annual unity dinner. Nancy Pelosi is our keynote speaker. And then Montgomery and Person counties are coming up later in July. Here is our contact information. kboer@ncdp.org is my email address. I have office hours Fridays from 12 to 1. I will share these links tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to stop my screen.